Let me tell you something I learned long before I worked in data. You cannot compress repetition into 50 minutes, and you cannot create impact without authority. So here's something about me. Before I worked in data, I was a high school math teacher. I taught upper level math courses like geometry, algebra 2, pre-calculus. And in algebra 2, for example, it's not a subject you understand by watching someone do it. It requires repetition, practice, mistakes, corrections, and more practice. And at one point, I worked in an environment where there was a no homework mandate. Students were not required to take work home. So imagine this. You have about 50 minutes of real instruction time once things settle down, and you are teaching quadratic equations. Students need practice to build fluency, but you're not allowed to require practice outside of class. I cared deeply, and I prepared well, and I worked hard, but I cannot bend time. That's not one of my superpowers. So, this is not a skill problem. This is a structural problem. And over time, I realized something important. It doesn't matter how talented or committed you are if you do not have the levers to affect change. You can want impact. You can talk about impact. You can be evaluated on impact. But without authority, you're dependent on permission. And being dependent on permission to do your job is exhausting. I see the same pattern in organizations with data teams. Companies say they want to be data driven and they hire strong analysts and they talk about AI. They expect insight, they expect transformation. But then the data team does not control priorities, they don't define metrics, and they're not positioned near executive decision making. So what happens? Well, they become reactive and they clean the data, they build the dashboards, they export to Excel, and they answer urgent requests. And then the leaders are wondering, why are the data team not driving any changes? Well, because driving changes require more than insights. It requires ownership. If you are responsible for outcomes, but not empowered to influence the system that create these outcomes, you are set up to struggle. And this is not about complaining, it's about design. When I walk into any role, I think less about title and more about levers. What decisions can I influence? What trade offs can I make? Where does authority actually sit? Talent without levers is potential energy, and potential energy does not move organizations. If you want data teams to be impactful, we have to stop treating them as reporting utility, and we need to start designing them as strategic partners. Impact requires accountability. Accountability requires authority. Authority requires structure and structural clarity. Otherwise, we're just hoping good people can overcome misaligned systems. And that's not fair to them or to the organization. I share ideas like this every week, and I invite you to like and subscribe to get more.